The FBI have covered some strange and mysterious cases over the years. Everything from missing persons to espionage can fall into the organization's remit. And sometimes, even simple-looking cases can have strange aspects. Number 5. The FBI can sometimes get involved in missing persons cases, especially if it seems like a crime has been committed or if the missing person is a child. In the case of Daniel Quan, it definitely seems like foul play was involved when he vanished in September of 2019. Daniel was 77 years old at the time of his disappearance and paralyzed from the chest down after an accident decades earlier. He relied on a wheelchair and a specially modified vehicle to get around. He was a relatively private man, but attended church independently and apparently visited friends without the assistance of his 2 daughters. Daniel was last seen on September 3rd, 2019, when he left his home in Atlanta, Georgia, and didn't come back. Daniel's daughters grew concerned when they couldn't get in touch with him and found personal items missing from his home. One of those items was his cell phone, which the women were able to track. They tracked their father's phone to an apartment complex in the neighboring county, but the phone switched off before they could pinpoint its exact location, apparently running out of battery. This didn't cause too many problems though, as the women found Daniel's car parked outside of one of the buildings. At this point, they reported Daniel missing to the police. Police immediately began searching the area looking for information. One of the neighbors happened to be a radio dispatcher for the county police department. She told authorities she recognized the vehicle as it had visited the complex several times and was able to point out the apartment Daniel had visited on those occasions. Rather than police investigating the location, the family found out the information and a friend decided to pay the apartment a visit. They found a woman named Mi Young Cho Jeon and her husband, who was a preacher at the church Daniel attended. The woman had a number of Daniel's personal belongings and was trying to leave through the back door with Daniel's wheelchair when the friend arrived. John was questioned by police, and she told them she knew Daniel through church and that he often visited to enjoy her home-cooked meals. On September 3rd, he'd come to visit Jeon as usual. He told her he was waiting for 3 people to come and pick him up, and Jeon fed him while he waited. He also told her he had some financial concerns related to his daughters. Jeon told police the man Daniel had been waiting for had come and he'd left with him, leaving his belongings at her home. Daniel's daughters say they'd never met Jeon before and don't believe he would willingly disappear from their lives. One of Daniel's daughters, Grace, helped her father with his finances and was able to notice a large sum of money that had been withdrawn from his account after he disappeared. She believes his disappearance was in some way related to the money. Police have named Jeon as a person of interest, but currently have no suspects and no clues that could lead them to the missing man. Number 4. We often think of the FBI as investigating the most serious crimes, as well as the biggest unknowns that threaten the United States. But not every case is like that. One of the cases the FBI is seeking information on, among the numerous missing persons cases and armed robberies, is the theft of a simple violin. The violin in question is worth $900,000 and was created by one of the most influential violin craftsmen in the instrument's history. And remarkably, it may have been stolen by accident. Hieronymus Amati II, the great-grandson of the person credited for inventing the modern violin, crafted this particular violin in 1710, in the middle of a golden age for the craft, from maple and alpine spruce trees. Over the years, it was kept in good condition and only grew in value until it wound up in the hands of Roland Weinstein in October of 2013. Weinstein was an art collector, but took a shining to the instrument and bought it at auction. He couldn't play himself, but considered himself the instrument's caretaker and let friends and talented musicians play the violin. Weinstein had been hit by thieves before. In 2011, a 1965 Pablo Picasso drawing was stolen from his gallery. After this, he was especially cautious, and in December of 2020, he grew concerned that the place he'd been keeping the violin wasn't safe enough. He took the violin to his home and left it in his white Tesla, which he parked outside. Unbeknownst to him, this was the wrong decision. The car locked automatically once the keys were taken a certain distance away from the vehicle. However, on December 8th, while Weinstein was driving home, the keys fell out of his pocket and wound up on the floor of the car. He went inside thinking the vehicle was secure, only to realize his mistake when he came outside a while later to find it missing with the violin inside. The FBI have taken on the investigation. It's not believed the violin was the true target of the theft, meaning the thief probably didn't know its true worth and didn't treat it with care. So far, neither the violin nor the car have been found. Number 3. Throughout its history, the CIA has only ever found 3 moles within its organization. But the mystery surrounding the possibility of a 4th mole is something the FBI has been investigating since the 1980s. Oleg Gyurdevsky joined the Soviet Union's KGB in the 1960s. He quickly rose up through the ranks and became one of the hundreds of spies the organization had on the front lines of the Cold War. But Oleg was not fiercely loyal to the USSR. He believed in the Union growing up, but the building of the Berlin Wall was a turning point for him. When he was stationed abroad, he became even more disenchanted with the Soviets, and particularly the KGB, which he deemed to be full of bureaucrats. In the late 1960s, he became a double agent, passing on information to the British intelligence agencies in an effort to undermine his official employers. He became a valuable asset to both the British and the US. That came to an abrupt end in May of 1985. Oleg was stationed in London when he received a message saying he needed to go back to Moscow urgently. He was supposedly going to be promoted, and some high-ranking officials wanted to see him. Oleg knew this was almost definitely a trap, but his MI6 handlers said there was no sign anything was wrong. He returned to Moscow, where it was obvious someone had broken into his apartment and searched for evidence. A few days later, he would be kidnapped and held while a KGB general tried to force a confession. He was eventually taken home. The KGB didn't have the evidence they needed, but it wouldn't be long before they did. Oleg was smuggled out of the country in a specially modified Land Rover by 3 MI6 agents. He was taken to the UK, where he still lives. The situation was incredibly worrying for the CIA. One spy being found out was bad, but this was not an isolated occurrence. Dozens of people working undercover for the CIA and its allies had been exposed in just a few months. At least 10 were not as lucky as Oleg. It was clear the CIA had a mole in its ranks. A special investigatory team was set up, and a man named Aldrich Ames was arrested in 1994. He'd been made chief of the CIA's Soviet counterintelligence branch some years earlier, and had access to all the information the Soviets would need to take out the CIA's spies. There was only one problem. Ames gave a detailed account of his work for the KGB, including the exact date he'd handed over a dossier on spies working in the USSR. June 13, 1985 was more than a month after Oleg received his summons back to Moscow. Yet the KGB had already concluded Oleg and 2 others were spies before Ames had handed over their names. The CIA and FBI have both set up investigations to try to work out who outed Oleg. The only 2 other moles in the CIA didn't have access to information on Oleg in 1985. It is, of course, possible Ames was lying about the date, but the CIA and FBI have reasons to believe this wasn't the case. The possibility of an undercover mole caused an air of paranoia in the CIA, but it was a risk too great for the organization to ignore. It's not known if the FBI still has the case open, but it remains unsolved. Number 2. In November of 2017, a Border Patrol officer in Texas lost his life while on duty. His partner was severely injured but survived. What happened to them remains a mystery. Rodelio Martinez and his partner Stephen Garland were investigating smugglers in Culberson County, Texas. It was a relatively isolated area, and smugglers were known to hide their contraband in drainage tunnels that ran under the interstate highway. The pair parked their patrol car above one such tunnel, possibly to inspect something. The next thing anyone is certain of is that Agent Martinez was found a short while later, lying on his back at the entrance on the other side of the highway. Agent Garland was able to tell a radio dispatcher, "We ran into a culvert, but nothing more." Though he survived the incident, he has no memory of what happened. Agent Martinez passed away due to blunt force trauma to the head. However, there was no sign of a struggle, and all of the injuries on his body were on one side. The local sheriff was one of the first people to investigate the case. He believes it was an accident. The drop from the highway to the bottom of the tunnel was 10 feet, and a fall from that height could explain the injuries. It was a dark, moonless night when the incident occurred, and it's possible they didn't know how big the drop was. However, Agent Garland's wording that they went into a culvert confuses matters slightly, as they wouldn't have gone into the tunnel at all if they'd fallen from above. Politicians and the Border Patrol Union disagreed with the sheriff's conclusion. They suspected the two agents were attacked by smugglers who threw rocks at them. The FBI launched an investigation shortly after the incident. They conducted hundreds of interviews, searched for cell phone pings, and surveyed the area from the sky, but no explanation that satisfied the Union for how two trained agents could suffer these injuries has ever been found. Number 1. On the 4th of July, 2015, while most families were celebrating the holiday, Sherry Ballard was trying to get in touch with her daughter. Nobody had seen Crystal Rogers since the night before. Crystal lived with her boyfriend and the father of her youngest child, Brooks Huck. According to Huck, he'd been at home playing games on her phone when he went to bed at around midnight. When he woke up, she was gone and her car was missing. Crystal's mother claims this was strange, as she would never just leave her 5 children. But Huck wasn't worried, as she often spent the night at a cousin's house or with friends. Crystal's family contacted police to report her missing on July 5th. That same day, her car was found with a flat tire on the side of the highway. Her keys, purse, and cell phone were still inside, but it didn't seem like Crystal had driven the car herself. The seat was in the wrong position, and Crystal's mother believes someone else drove the car to the side of the highway. Unfortunately, almost 6 years later, this was the last major break in the case. Huck immediately fell under suspicion. He didn't appear to be concerned to Crystal's family, and didn't help search for the mother of his son. His brother was a police officer who told Huck to not talk to investigators, and was eventually fired from the force. His home and some of the other family members were subjects to FBI raids, though it's not known if anything useful was discovered. Strangely, Crystal's disappearance may be connected to 2 other deaths. The first is that of her own father, Tommy Ballard. Tommy had led efforts to find his daughter, but 16 months after she vanished, he passed away. He was on a hunting trip with a 12-year-old grandson on property owned by his son when he was struck in the chest by a bullet. It's not known if it was an accident. Someone else who was hunting on the land could have mistaken Tommy for an animal, but his family believe it's too much of a coincidence, and the FBI is also investigating his death. The second is of a man named Jason Ellis. Jason was a police officer who was ambushed on his way home from work. The people responsible for his death have never been caught, but Crystal's mother believes she heard something related to the case that she shouldn't have. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.